Hello, everyone. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why the people you treat with the most kindness often treat you with the least respect? It doesn't make sense, right? You give, you care, you make sacrifices, and instead of appreciation, you get overlooked, dismissed, even mistreated. But here's the reality. Kindness, when misunderstood, can make you a target. It can make people see you as someone they can take advantage of. Think about it. In any room, the person who is always saying yes becomes the person no one listens to. The one who is always available becomes the one people take for granted. And the one who is always understanding becomes the one who is rarely respected. Why? Because people don't value what they don't have to work for. If you never say no, your yes becomes meaningless. If you never set boundaries, people assume you have none. And if you always prioritize others, people assume you don't value yourself. It's not that kindness is bad. The problem is when kindness lacks strength. Look at history, look at leadership, look at relationships. The people who are respected are not the ones who try to please everyone. They are the ones who know when to say yes, when to say no, and when to walk away. So the real question is this: are you being kind, or are you being too afraid to be anything else? If your kindness is costing you your self-respect, then it's not kindness anymore, it's surrender. And the world does not respect those who surrender. Be kind, but be strong, because kindness without strength is just an invitation for people to take advantage of you. The harsh truth about being too nice is that it often backfires in ways most people don't see coming. You grow up believing that kindness is the key to acceptance, that treating people with respect and generosity will make them treat you the same way. But reality works differently. The more you give, the more people take. The more you accommodate, the less they appreciate. And the moment you start putting yourself last, the world follows suit. Think about it. Have you ever been in a situation where you went out of your way to help someone, only for them to turn around and forget you when you needed help? Have you ever sacrificed your own comfort just to make someone else happy, only to be met with indifference or worse, entitlement? It's not a coincidence. When you consistently put others first at the cost of yourself, people don't see it as generosity. They see it as an expectation. At first, people appreciate kindness. They enjoy the benefits of your patience, your willingness to be there, your constant support. But over time, something changes. Instead of valuing you, they begin to assume you'll always be there. Your kindness turns into an unspoken obligation, and before you know it, you're no longer a person they admire, you're a resource they use. This is why being too nice backfires. In an attempt to gain respect, you end up losing it. In an effort to be liked, you end up being overlooked. People begin to expect your kindness as a given. And when you finally say no, when you finally set a boundary, they react as if you've betrayed them. Why? Because you taught them that your time, your energy, and your presence came without limits. The problem isn't kindness itself. Kindness is a powerful force when paired with strength. The real issue is when kindness lacks boundaries. The world doesn't respect kindness that comes at the cost of self-respect. It respects those who know when to be generous and when to draw the line. When you give too much without expecting anything in return, you don't come across as admirable, you come across as disposable. The people who command respect are not the ones who say yes to everything. They are the ones who are selective. They know that kindness without limits is just another form of self-neglect. They understand that if you don't respect your own time, no one else will. If you don't value your own worth, no one else will. And if you don't enforce your own boundaries, people will assume you don't have any. It's uncomfortable to admit, but people treat you based on what you allow. If you allow yourself to be walked on, you will be walked on. If you make yourself too available, you will be taken for granted. And if you give without ever demanding reciprocity, you will be left empty. This isn't pessimism, it's reality. Being kind is a choice, but being kind without strength is a mistake. If you want respect, you need to set boundaries. If you want to be valued, you need to stop giving yourself away for free. And if you want to be truly kind, you must first be kind to yourself. Because the moment you start respecting yourself, the world will follow. Respect is something everyone wants, but not everyone realizes how their own actions invite the very disrespect they wish to avoid. Most people assume that disrespect comes from others, that it's something external, something out of their control. But what if, without realizing it, you are the one allowing it? What if the way you carry yourself, the way you communicate, and the way you respond to others are silently teaching people to treat you with less respect than you deserve? It doesn't happen all at once. Disrespect creeps in gradually. It starts with small things. Someone cutting you off mid-sentence, a friend constantly canceling plans, a coworker taking credit for your ideas, or a family member expecting you to always be the one to compromise. At first, you let it slide. You don't want to make a big deal out of it. You tell yourself they didn't mean it. Or maybe you convince yourself that being understanding is more important than standing up for yourself. But the moment you excuse it, you invite it. The moment you tolerate it, you reinforce it, because people learn how to treat you based on what you accept. If you allow someone to dismiss your words, they will continue to talk over you. If you always say yes to last-minute favors, people will assume your time isn't valuable. If you never correct someone when they disrespect you, they will assume you don't mind. The truth is, respect is rarely given freely. It is established through boundaries. People respect those who respect themselves. If you have weak boundaries, if you hesitate to say no, if you let people take advantage of your kindness, if you are always the one making sacrifices, you send a message that your needs come second. And once people get comfortable treating you that way, it becomes the norm. One of the biggest reasons people invite disrespect is their fear of conflict. They believe that standing up for themselves will make them look rude, unkind, or difficult to be around. So they remain silent when they should speak up. They agree when they should push back. They smile when they should walk away. But avoiding conflict doesn't prevent disrespect, it encourages it. Because the people who benefit from your silence will never voluntarily change their behavior. Another way people unknowingly invite disrespect is by over-explaining themselves. Have you ever said no to something but immediately felt the need to justify why? Have you ever apologized for things that weren't your fault just to smooth things over? The more you over-explain, the more permission you give others to question your decisions. Confident people don't over-explain. They don't beg for understanding. They set their boundaries and let them stand. It's not enough to expect respect. You have to demand it, not with aggression, not with arrogance, but with quiet strength. You have to be willing to correct people when they cross a line. You have to value your time enough to say no without guilt. You have to stop apologizing for having standards. Because the truth is, people will never respect you more than you respect yourself. The way you carry yourself matters. Your tone, your posture, your words, and your actions all communicate how you expect to be treated. If you shrink yourself in conversations, people will talk over you. If you hesitate when you speak, people will question your authority. If you constantly put others before yourself, people will assume you don't mind being second. But when you stand firm, when you speak with confidence, when you set clear boundaries, people notice. And more importantly, they adjust. You don't have to be unkind to demand respect. You don't have to be aggressive to set boundaries. You just have to decide that you will no longer tolerate less than what you deserve. Because the truth is, the way people treat you is a reflection of what you allow. And the moment you stop inviting disrespect, you'll be amazed at how quickly people start giving you the respect you've deserved all along. Kindness is often praised as one of the greatest virtues a person can have. It builds relationships, fosters trust, and creates a sense of connection between people. But there is a fine line between being kind and being perceived as weak. The problem is that many people don't realize when they've crossed that line. They assume that the more they give, the more they will be appreciated. That the more they tolerate, the more respect they will earn. But the harsh reality is that when kindness is not balanced with strength, it quickly turns into an open invitation for others to take advantage. People admire kindness, but they respect strength. When someone is kind yet firm, they are seen as a person of character. But when kindness lacks boundaries, it is mistaken for naivety. It's the difference between helping someone because you choose to and helping because you're afraid to say no. It's the difference between being generous out of goodwill and giving because you don't want to disappoint. The moment your kindness becomes something others feel entitled to, it stops being a virtue and starts becoming a liability. The world operates on unspoken rules, and one of those rules is that people test limits. In friendships, in business, in relationships, people instinctively push to see how much they can get away with. If they sense that you will always say yes, they will ask for more. If they realize you never stand up for yourself, they will keep pushing. And before you know it, your kindness is no longer a gift, it's an expectation. And kindness is almost an expectation to accept wrongness. At that point, when you try to set a boundary, people react not with gratitude, but with resentment. Not because they don't see your value, but because you never required them to. Weakness, on the other hand, is not just about being physically or emotionally vulnerable. It is about lacking the ability to assert yourself. It is when you prioritize being liked over being respected. It is when you fear rejection so much that you allow others to treat you however they choose. And the most dangerous part is that weakness disguised as kindness often goes unnoticed until it's too late. Until you find yourself exhausted, taken for granted, and wondering why people don't treat you the way you treat them. Being kind does not mean being passive. It does not mean staying silent when someone disrespects you. It does not mean sacrificing your own well-being to keep others comfortable. True kindness is intentional. It is knowing when to give and when to hold back. It is understanding that you can be generous without being used. It is having the wisdom to know that not everyone deserves your kindness and the strength to enforce that. The most respected people in the world are not the ones who please everyone. They are the ones who stand firm in their values, who are kind yet unwavering, who give without losing themselves in the process. They know that kindness is a choice, not an obligation. And that means being able to say no when necessary. It means being able to walk away from situations that drain you. It means recognizing that if your kindness is not met with respect, then it is being wasted. If you find yourself constantly giving, constantly compromising, constantly excusing bad behavior in the name of kindness, then you are not being kind. You are being weak. And the longer you allow it, the harder it becomes to break free. Because people will treat you exactly how you allow them to. If you want to be valued, start valuing yourself. If you want to be respected, start respecting your own time and energy. Kindness is powerful, but only when it is paired with strength. The moment you cross the line into weakness, your kindness stops being an asset and starts being a burden. The world does not just need kind people. It needs strong, kind people. People who can give without being depleted. People who can love without losing themselves. People who can be kind without being walked on. And the moment you learn to balance both, you will never have to worry about being mistaken for weak again. There is a painful reality that many good-hearted people come to face at some point in life. Kindness is not always met with kindness. While some appreciate your generosity, your patience, and your willingness to help, others see it as an opportunity to take advantage. Not everyone you help will be grateful. Not everyone you forgive will change. And not everyone you sacrifice for will ever do the same for you. The truth is, the world is full of people who will exploit a good heart simply because they can. It doesn't happen all at once. It starts subtly. A friend who constantly needs a favor but never returns one. A coworker who takes credit for your efforts, knowing you won't make a fuss. A family member who expects you to always be the one to compromise. At first, you assume they just need help. You tell yourself that being there for others is the right thing to do, and it is. But what happens when the pattern never stops? What happens when your kindness becomes a cycle of giving while the other person only takes? The reason some people exploit good-hearted individuals is simple. They don't fear consequences. They know you will be understanding. They know you will be patient. They know you won't fight back. And so they push the limits. They take more than they should. They keep asking, expecting, demanding, because they have learned that you will not say no. And the more you tolerate, the more they take. One of the biggest mistakes good-hearted people make is assuming that everyone thinks the way they do. They believe that if they show kindness, others will reciprocate. But not everyone operates that way. Some people only see kindness as a weakness. They see generosity as something to exploit, not something to admire. And the moment they realize that you are willing to bend over backward for them, they will take full advantage. Another reason people take advantage of kind-hearted individuals is because they don't respect what comes easily. When you give without hesitation, when you forgive without boundaries, when you sacrifice without being asked, people stop valuing your efforts. They begin to expect them. And once your kindness becomes an expectation rather than a gift, it loses its meaning. It is not wrong to be kind. It is not wrong to help others, but it is dangerous to do so without discernment. Because the hard truth is this: some people will never stop taking unless you stop giving. Some people will never respect your boundaries until you enforce them. And some people will never appreciate your kindness until it is no longer available to them. If you are constantly drained, constantly sacrificing, constantly feeling unappreciated, then it is time to ask yourself, are you being kind or are you allowing yourself to be used? Because there is a difference. Kindness is a choice, but being exploited is a pattern. And the only way to break that pattern is to set limits. You must learn to say no without guilt. You must stop explaining yourself when you refuse to be taken advantage of. You must recognize that not everyone deserves your kindness. Some people only respond to strength. Some only respect what they have to earn. And some will only value you when they realize they can no longer manipulate you. The world needs more good-hearted people, but it needs them to be strong as well. It needs them to understand that kindness without boundaries is self-destruction. It needs them to recognize that not everyone is worthy of their time, their energy, or their sacrifices. And most importantly, it needs them to realize that the people who truly appreciate their kindness will never put them in a position where they feel used. At the end of the day, kindness should never come at the cost of your own well-being. A good heart is a gift, but only when it is protected. And the moment you stop letting people exploit you, the moment you stop giving endlessly to those who only take, you will begin to see just how valuable your kindness truly is. There is an unspoken burden that comes with always saying yes. At first, it feels like the right thing to do. You want to help, to be there for others, to avoid conflict or disappointment. You believe that saying yes makes you a good person, a reliable friend, a valuable employee, or a supportive family member. But over time, something begins to shift. The more you say yes to others, the more you begin to say no to yourself. People start to expect your compliance. They assume that you will always agree, always show up, always adjust to make things easier for them. And before you even realize it, your time, your energy, and your priorities are no longer your own. You become the person everyone relies on, but no one considers. You are appreciated for what you provide, but rarely for who you are. And when you finally do hesitate, when you finally try to set a boundary, people don't understand because you have trained them to believe that your answer is always yes. The cost of always saying yes is not immediate. It creeps in slowly, unnoticed at first. It begins with exhaustion, feeling drained, stretched too thin, unable to keep up with demands placed on you. Then comes the resentment. You start to feel frustrated, not just with others, but with yourself. You wonder why you never have time for what truly matters to you, why you always feel obligated, even when you don't want to be, why people take you for granted. The truth is, when you never say no, you teach people that your needs are secondary. You show them that your time is not valuable enough to protect. And people, whether intentionally or not, will take advantage of that. They will keep asking, keep expecting, keep demanding, not necessarily because they are bad people, but because you have made it easy for them to do so. The silent cost of always saying yes is also a loss of identity. You begin to lose touch with what you actually want. You become so accustomed to pleasing others that you forget how to make choices for yourself. You hesitate before speaking your mind, afraid that your honesty might upset someone. You ignore your own instincts, choosing instead to accommodate others. And with each decision made to keep the peace, a part of you fades into the background. Saying yes too often does not make you kind, it makes you exhausted. It does not make you selfless, it makes you invisible. And the longer you continue this pattern, the harder it becomes to break free. Because when you have spent so much of your life being agreeable, the idea of saying no feels uncomfortable. It feels wrong. But the reality is, saying no is not selfish. It is not cruel. It is necessary. Boundaries are not a rejection of others. They are a declaration of self-respect. They remind people that your time and energy are not limitless, that you are not a resource to be used at will, that you have needs, desires, and priorities of your own. The people who truly care about you will understand and respect that. The ones who get angry or resentful when you start setting boundaries were the ones who are benefiting from your lack of them. If you feel like you are constantly giving, constantly stretching yourself too thin, constantly feeling drained by the weight of others' expectations, it is time to ask yourself, what is this costing me? What have I sacrificed in the name of being agreeable? What have I given up because I was too afraid to say no? You do not have to prove your worth by saying yes to everything. You do not have to please everyone at the expense of your own well-being. Your value is not determined by how much you accommodate others. The moment you learn to say no, the moment you start protecting your time and energy, you will begin to reclaim yourself. And in doing so, you will finally understand that true kindness is not about pleasing everyone. It is about valuing yourself enough to choose when and where to say yes. Kindness is one of the most powerful traits a person can have. It has the ability to change lives, to heal wounds, and to build lasting relationships. But there is a delicate balance that must be maintained. Because if you are not careful, your kindness can become an invitation for others to take advantage of you. The more you give without boundaries, the more some people will take without appreciation. And before you know it, your kindness is no longer seen as a virtue, but as an expectation. The mistake many people make is believing that being kind means always saying yes, always being available, always putting others first. But true kindness is not about sacrificing yourself to the point of exhaustion. It is about being generous without losing your sense of self-respect. Because the moment you start feeling drained, resentful, or unappreciated, that is a sign that your kindness is being taken for granted. The first step to being kind without being used is to recognize that you have a choice. Too often, people who are naturally compassionate feel obligated to help, even when it comes at their own expense. They feel guilty for saying no. They worry about disappointing others. But the reality is, kindness is only meaningful when it is given willingly. If you are helping out of guilt, fear, or pressure, then it is not kindness, it is obligation. And the more you give from a place of obligation, the less fulfilling it becomes. Setting boundaries is the key to ensuring that your kindness is valued rather than exploited. Boundaries are not selfish, they are necessary. They let people know what you will and will not tolerate. If someone only comes to you when they need something, but never shows up when you need support, it is okay to limit your availability. If you constantly go out of your way to help, but the other person never acknowledges or appreciates your effort, it is okay to step back. Your time and energy are valuable, and you should never feel guilty for protecting them. One of the hardest but most important lessons to learn is that not everyone deserves unlimited access to you. There are people who will respect your kindness, and there are people who will abuse it. The ones who truly care about you will appreciate your generosity without expecting it. They will respect your time without demanding it. and they will be just as willing to give as they are to receive. But the ones who take you for granted will only notice your absence when you finally stop giving. Being kind also does not mean tolerating disrespect. Too often people assume that kindness and weakness are the same thing, but being kind does not mean allowing people to treat you poorly. It does not mean ignoring bad behavior or accepting less than you deserve. You can be kind and still hold people accountable. You can be understanding without letting others walk all over you. True kindness requires self-respect, and self-respect means refusing to accept anything that devalues you. If you want to be kind without being taken for granted, you must also learn the power of saying no. Many people struggle with this because they fear rejection or conflict. They worry that saying no will make them seem rude or uncaring, but the truth is, saying no does not make you unkind, it makes you strong. It shows that you value yourself enough to protect your time, your energy, and your well-being. And the people who genuinely respect you will not be offended by your boundaries. Another important thing to remember is that kindness should be a two-way street. If you are always giving but never receiving, that is not a healthy dynamic. Healthy relationships, whether friendships, family, or work, are built on mutual respect and appreciation. If someone constantly takes from you but never gives back, it is time to reevaluate their place in your life. You deserve to be surrounded by people who see your kindness as a gift, not as something they are entitled to. At the end of the day, kindness is one of the most beautiful qualities a person can have. But it should never come at the cost of your own happiness and well-being. Being kind does not mean allowing yourself to be used. It does not mean sacrificing your needs for the sake of others. True kindness comes from a place of strength, knowing when to give, when to step back, and when to say enough is enough. And because when kindness is paired with self-respect, it becomes something even more powerful. It becomes an act of wisdom. In the end, kindness should never come at the cost of your self-respect. It is a gift you choose to give, not an obligation to be exploited. When you set boundaries, value your own time, and learn to say no when necessary, you ensure that your kindness is appreciated rather than taken for granted. True kindness is not about pleasing everyone. It is about giving from a place of strength, not sacrifice. The right people will respect your generosity, and the wrong ones will reveal themselves when you stop overextending. Choose to be kind, but never at the expense of your own well-being. Thank you